At 6 a.m. on Monday, I backed my car out of the garage, heading to catch the 6:45 train to the city. We lived in Harborview, a quiet suburb on the south shore of Long Island. I paused to ensure the garage door closed before leaving. 2 weeks ago, I forgot to check, and Megan called me at work, furious. She accused me of not caring about her safety, fearing someone could have entered the house. I apologized and promised to be more careful. She calmed down but still criticized my carelessness. For the past 2 weeks, things had been tense at home, and I couldn't understand why she was still upset. I'm Eric Weston, 27, with light brown hair and a closely cropped beard. I managed the foreign exchange desk at a major commercial bank, making profitable currency trades. My intuition for timing trades earned me 2 promotions in the past 2 years. Megan, also 27 but a few months older, has jet black hair and striking Mediterranean features. She works for a national medical insurance firm in Huntington, about 25 minutes from home. Her supervisor, Fred Bennett, is a tall, muscular man whom I've met at company events. Something about him bothered me, though I never mentioned it to Megan. After ensuring the garage door was closed, I tuned the satellite radio to a country station. The first song was about a man loving his bar, but the second struck a chord. It described the issues in my marriage, distant behavior, small slights, and unsatisfying love. Absorbed in the song, I missed a green light until cars honked. I then drove to a parking lot to finish listening. Afterward, I headed to the train station and caught the earlier 6:30 train to Penn Station. On the train, I reminisced about meeting Megan. It was July, right after my 16th birthday. As I mowed the lawn, a moving van arrived at the Clark's house nearby. Mr. Clark had passed away, and his widow moved in with family, so the house was sold. A BMW followed the van, and out stepped Mr. and Mrs. Henry Marino. From the back seat emerged Megan, the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. She was a few months older than me, with short hair, denim shorts, and a halter top. She smiled at me, and I was instantly smitten. A few days later, I saw Megan and her mom, Cynthia, outside. Gathering my courage, I introduced myself. Cynthia soon left us with iced tea, giving us some privacy. Megan and I hit it off, spending the rest of the summer together. There were no romantic moves, just the joy of each other's company. When school started, we shared lunch and the bus ride home but had no classes together. I asked her to the October harvest dance, and she agreed. However, as the school year progressed, Megan made new friends, especially with the cheerleaders, aiming to join their squad. We still sat together on the bus and talked daily. The dance day arrived, and my dad drove us there. As we walked in, some football players smirked and laughed. "What's that about?" I asked. "Who cares?" Megan shrugged. We had fun dancing until a slow song played. Just as I asked Megan to dance, Ryan Parker, the star linebacker, approached. "Let him go, babe," Ryan said to Megan, who left with him without a glance back. Stunned, I asked my friend Mike what happened. "You just got dumped," Mike said. Megan and Ryan danced closely, clearly familiar with each other. I felt humiliated. After the dance, they joined the football team, with Ryan possessively holding Megan. I was too intimidated to confront him. Ryan later taunted me. "You didn't think a nerd like you could get a girl like that, did you?" He laughed and walked away. Megan never returned to me that night, enjoying herself with her new friends. I stayed, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me leave early. As the dance ended, I reluctantly approached Megan and Ryan's table. "Megan, my dad will be here soon. I need to take you home," I said. "Get lost, Weston," Ryan responded. "She's going home with me." "Megan," I snapped, "I don't care how you get home. If you don't come with me, my dad will tell your mom. You can explain why you came home with Ryan." I walked away, not caring if she walked home alone. Eventually, Megan sat beside me and tried to make small talk. "Did you have a good time at the dance, Eric? Are you serious? You dumped me for Ryan Parker, so no, I did not have a good time. I saw my dad's car pull up and walk toward it. Megan had to run to catch up. My dad, sensing something was wrong, asked, 'Did you enjoy the dance?' I didn't respond, and he looked puzzled. Megan waited by the rear door, but I got in the front seat, leaving her to get in alone. My dad was furious. 'Get out and open the door for your date,' he ordered. I would if she was my date, I replied. My dad sensed something was wrong. Megan got in the back, and we drove in silence. When we arrived at Megan's house, her mom was waiting at the door. My dad got out, but I stayed in the car. Megan's mom looked concerned. Megan walked past her mom without looking back. When my dad returned, he asked what happened. "She found someone she liked better at the dance," I said. "Forget her, son. There are plenty of fish in the sea." After that, I ignored Megan. She started riding with Ryan Parker and joined the cheerleading team. I made the honor roll. After graduation, I went to Wharton on a full scholarship, while Megan started working. My parents threw me a big graduation party, and the Marinos were invited, but not Megan. When Mrs. Marino sat next to me, she said, "I thought you two made a great couple." "I'm sorry something happened." We made small talk until she asked what happened that night. I replied, "We realized we wanted different things in life." She looked like she wanted to say more but didn't. She wished me luck and left. I started my job at the bank in mid-June and found an apartment in Soho. My new job was hectic, leaving no time for socializing. I quickly realized that real-life work was very different from school. It had been 4 months since I saw my parents. One evening, Mom called, inviting me to stay for the weekend. She mentioned my old room was ready and said she missed cooking for me. Taking the train was the easiest way to get there, and their house was a short 8-block walk from the station. Halfway there, a car pulled up honking. It was my high school friend, Rachel, shouting, "Hey, stranger. Need a lift?" "Heck yeah, it's hot out here," I replied, hopping into the back seat. David, another old friend, was driving. We caught up on the past 4 years. "I didn't know you guys were a couple. How long has this been going on?" I asked. Rachel showed me her wedding band. 2 years now, David said, smiling. I had no idea, I replied, feeling a bit sad. "I haven't been a good friend, have I?" "That's crazy," Rachel said. "We haven't reached out either. It's just life." "Thanks, Rachel," I said, relieved. "It's really good seeing you guys." David then invited me to a party at their place the next night. Rachel gave him a look I didn't understand at the time. "Sure, I'd love to. Are any of our old friends coming?" I asked. "Yes, quite a few," Rachel said. "Great, I'll bring some beer." "What time and where?" 7:30 at 135, Remsen Street, David said, and they dropped me off at my parents' house. I was excited about the party and seeing old friends. At the party, I was chatting with Kenny Jacobs when I felt a tap on my shoulder and heard, "Hi, neighbor. Long time no see." It was Megan, looking as beautiful as ever. Memories of her with Ryan Parker flashed in my mind. I turned back to Kenny, but Megan's friend confronted me. "That was rude," she said. "Not as rude as what she did to me," I replied. "Eric, please. You can't still be mad about that night, it's been 6 years," Megan said. "I sure can," I fumed, walking away. Rachel ran to comfort Megan, while David pulled me aside, asking me to apologize to keep peace with Rachel. I found Megan in the kitchen. "Can we talk alone?" I asked. Megan's friend resisted, but Rachel convinced her to leave us alone. After a few awkward moments, I started. Megan, I'm sorry for what I said. That night hurt me deeply. Maybe it's time to move on. No, you're right, Eric. I acted terribly and deserved what you said. I never apologized. Would you accept my apology now? Thank you, Megan. Yes, I accept. Megan hugged me, and we kissed passionately. Rachel and David walked in, with Rachel remarking, "I'll be damned, honey. It looks like you didn't know what you were doing." David sighed in relief, then puffed out his chest, saying, "Damn right, and don't you forget it." We all laughed and rejoined the party. Megan and I started dating, and 9 months later, we were married. The conductor's announcement brought me back to the present as the train rolled out. I reflected on the past 3 months of my marriage. I was convinced my wife was cheating. It seemed foolish to base this on a country song, but everything fit. My usual intuition was now sounding alarm bells. At the office, Howard Blake noticed something was off and followed me to my desk. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," I replied. "Nonsense," Howard said. "I can't let you gamble with the bank's money today. Tell me what's up, or go home." I sighed and confessed. "I think Megan is having an affair." "Are you sure?" he asked. "No, just a feeling," I admitted. "Your feelings are usually right. Don't ignore them." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not sure. I just found out today." "Take it easy. I'll support you. Let me know when you decide what to do." "I don't think you're on top of your game today," Howard insisted. He was right. I let my staff handle most of the work for the next 2 weeks. They seemed to enjoy the freedom. I closed my office door and cried. I couldn't imagine life without Megan. My sadness turned to anger. Confronting Megan without proof would be foolish. I needed a plan. After work, I bought voice-activated recorders and placed them around the house and on the phones. By Friday, I had proof of Megan's betrayal. Their conversation went like this. "Mark, this is Mark. Why are you calling me at home?" What if my wife answered? "Megan, I'd make up a work excuse. I think we should back off. Eric is acting funny." Mark, has he accused you? Megan, no, but he's cold and distant. Maybe we should cool it for a while. Mark, okay, if you think that's best. Then he suggested, "I'm going to Miami in 2 weeks. Maybe I can get you to join me. What do you think?" "I don't know, Eric might get suspicious." "Let me ask Fred, and if he agrees, you can tell Eric it's a work trip," Megan laughed. Now I knew for sure, Megan was planning a week with Bennett. Sadness overwhelmed me, then turned to anger. I needed proof for a divorce. A plan was necessary, but I didn't have one yet. I arrived home from work at 7:30 p.m. after a hectic trading day, with millions on the line and my mind elsewhere. Megan was cooking dinner. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing me. Her cheerful demeanor was rare lately. I expected her to mention her business trip to Miami soon. I spent most of my time outside, avoiding her, to prevent blurting out my knowledge of her affair. It was tough. "Glad you're in a good mood," I replied. "I have good news." "You go first," she said. My day wasn't great, I admitted. Megan giggled. "I've been asked to attend a seminar in South Beach, all expenses paid, at the Victor Hotel. I'll be gone from Friday this week to the following Saturday. Do you mind if I go?" She looked at me, trying to gauge my reaction. I saw excitement but also a hint of sadness in her eyes. 9 days is a long time. "Do you have to go?" I asked. "Mr. Bennett is counting on me. It'll be good for my career," she explained. I looked out the front door, knowing our marriage was at a crossroads. I quietly said, "If it's important for your job, you can go." When do you leave? Did you say I could go? She asked, surprised. I nodded, unable to speak. Megan hugged me, saying, "Thank you. This means so much to me." I regretted it already. Megan would leave from JFK at 10:30 a.m. on Friday. I insisted on driving her to the airport, despite her suggesting Bennett could take her. "No way. I want to see you off," I said. She reluctantly agreed, trying to hide her disappointment. Thursday morning, I told Howard, Megan is going to Miami for a business trip. They leave Friday and return next Saturday. Howard, with fire in his eyes, said, "You're covered. Mr. Diamond gave you carte blanche on the company credit card. Just reimburse for non-business expenses within 2 weeks." I asked how to thank Mr. Diamond, and Howard laughed. "A good single malt scotch will do. He got screwed in his divorce last year and hates cheating wives." I took the day off to prepare. I bought a round-trip ticket to Miami, a top-of-the-line Canon camera, a carry-on bag, new clothes, and a Yankees cap. Megan wouldn't believe I'd wear one as a Mets fan. I also picked up razors and hair dye. Everything went on the company card so Megan wouldn't notice. I was ready for my trip. Let the games begin. At home that night, I asked Megan for her trip itinerary. She was leaving on the 10:30 a.m. flight from JFK on JetBlue Airlines, staying in room 314 at the Victor Hotel. Mr. Bennett would be in a different room. I had booked a 1:30 p.m. flight, 3 hours behind hers, and got a room at the same hotel, hoping not to be seen checking in. We got up early Friday morning to reach the airport by 8:30. The car ride was quiet. Megan tried to talk, but I was too upset, knowing I was driving my wife to an affair. "Eric, are you okay with me taking this trip?" "You said it was fine," she asked. "I know what I said, but the reality of you being gone for 9 days is hitting me." "I'll miss you," I replied. "I understand. I'll miss you too. It will be a long and lonely 9 days," she said. "Maybe for me. You'll be at a glamorous South Beach hotel," I groaned. Megan laughed. "It's mostly work, not a vacation." We made small talk and parked at the short-term lot. At the JetBlue curbside check-in, we saw Bennett waiting. Megan glanced at me to gauge my reaction. Bennett approached, kissed Megan's cheek, and offered his hand to me. I smiled and shook it, hiding my anger. "Megan, we should get through security." "Nice to see you, Eric." "I'll take good care of Megan," Bennett said. I looked at him and replied, "I know what you mean." I smiled at Bennett and said, "Thanks for looking out for her." Their faces brightened, and they headed to security. Bennett went first, and Megan was about to hand her ID to a TSA agent when I pulled her back. "You're leaving without saying goodbye?" I asked. Megan hugged and kissed me. "Of course, how thoughtless of me." I hugged her tightly. "I love you. If anything happens, I want you to know, you're the best thing that ever happened to me." "I love you too, honey." "I have to go now," she said. As she started to leave, I pulled her back. "Megan, I know I said it was okay, but I don't want you to go. It's not too late. Tell Fred you can't go and come home with me." "Eric, I can't back out now. The tickets are bought, and Mr. Bennett needs me. I know I'm being selfish. I just don't want you to go. I need you too. Eric, I have to go. Don't try to stop me. I'm committed to this trip. I will be a great help to Fred. I can't let him down," she said. She looked at me, almost spoke, but then walked to the gate and handed her license to the agent. My eyes misted up, and I'm sure Megan thought it was because I would miss her. I walked to where Bennett was waiting and watched Megan with the TSA agent. She seemed flustered but composed herself by the time she reached us. They walked to the X-ray machines, and I watched Megan take off her shoes and place them in the bin. She shrugged at me and then walked through the body scanner. At that point, I had reached my limit and quickly left the building. I was no longer angry, just resigned to the fact that Megan was no longer mine. I moved my car to long-term parking, retrieved my carry-on, and returned to the terminal. I waited until Megan's plane had departed and then went through security myself. I sat down to eat breakfast and waited for my flight. I arrived at the hotel, checked in without problems, and got a shave and crew cut at the on-site barber. In my room, I dyed my hair black. With sunglasses and a bald cap, I was unrecognizable. The hotel was U-shaped, facing Ocean Avenue, with Megan and Fred's room in the right wing and mine in the center. I had a great view of the pool and the ocean. The hotel had shops on the first floor and an outdoor pool on the second. From my balcony, I could see the whole pool area. Under different circumstances, it might have felt romantic, but now it was anything but. At around 8 o'clock, I called Megan. She answered, "Hi, honey. I was worried when you didn't answer at home. Where were you?" "I stopped at a bar with the guys from work," I replied. She had the nerve to say, "You'd better not be hitting on any girls. Remember, you're a married man. I don't think I could forgive you if you did." The audacity, I thought. She's here with Bennett, yet she warns me. Why would you think I'd cheat? Have I ever given you a reason to suspect me? You know I would never do that. I trust you completely, which is why I let you go on this trip. You know that, right? Of course, honey. I feel the same. I don't know why I said that. I know you wouldn't hurt me, she stammered. Listen, Eric, I'm really tired from the flight. Will you call tomorrow? I'll be in a better mood. Sure, Megan. We can talk tomorrow, I replied. Good night, Eric. I love you, Megan added. Good night, Megan, I said and hung up. Did she notice I didn't say, I love you? Would she even care? I spent a restless night imagining what was happening in room 314. I awoke at dawn on Saturday. After breakfast in my room, I sat on the balcony. I saw Megan and Bennett walk to the pool. An idea came to me. I moved 2 large fake plants to the balcony and placed a chair behind them. Then I set up my camera and tripod, hiding the lens among the foliage to watch the pool area unnoticed. Megan and Bennett were already lounging on chaises, talking. Megan faced the arm of the U containing their room, wearing a new red bikini that showcased her cleavage and a high-cut bottom that barely covered her. I zoomed in with my camera but soon realized I couldn't hear their conversation. I needed a solution. After half an hour, I captured the first proof of infidelity. Bennett leaned over, turned Megan's head, and kissed her. Megan reciprocated, pulling him in by the neck. They kissed 4 times in the next hour before getting up to leave. As they walked off, holding hands, it was clear they were a couple. I turned off the camera and retreated to my room, overwhelmed with sadness. Seeing the betrayal was worse than suspecting it. Determined to hear their conversations, I searched online for spy stores and found one nearby. Disguised, I quickly bought a parabolic microphone that could connect to my camera. Back in my room, I set it up next to the camera, ready for the next opportunity. Sunday morning, I woke up startled at 10 a.m., having slept deeply after a long and exhausting day. I worried I might have missed something, but then I saw Megan and Bennett walking out of Lummis Park. I turned on the camera and microphone. To test the mic, I made a call to Megan and listened as her phone rang. The setup worked perfectly. Who is it? Bennett asked. It's Doofus, Megan replied with a laugh. Bennett laughed too. Suddenly worried, Megan said, I should take this. Something bad could have happened. Why else would he call on a Sunday morning? She answered the phone. Eric, is everything all right? Has something happened? She asked. I wanted to say, no, Doofus is fine, but I kept my anger in check. Instead, I said, "Nothing's wrong, honey. I was lonely and just wanted to hear your voice. It's nice to know you're worried about me. I worry about you all the time, Eric. It's Sunday morning, and I thought something bad might have happened." "You scared the crap out of me," Megan barked, annoyed. I was fed up with Megan's attitude. I didn't know I would be such a bother. I was feeling lonely and thought talking to my wife would cheer me up. "Sorry to bother you." I hung up before she could respond. "It's no bother," she said into the dead phone. I could hear her talking through the parabolic mic. She turned off her phone and walked to a nearby bench. "What did he want?" Bennett asked. "He was lonely and wanted to talk." "Why did I snap at him like that?" Megan wondered aloud. Bennett replied, "Megan, we've been having this affair for 6 months. Maybe you're getting tired of him. It might be time to let him go and get a divorce. Then we could be together without sneaking around, right?" Megan snapped. "And your wife won't mind if we go to your house. We won't have to sneak around anymore," she added sarcastically. "Megan, you make $38,000 a year. After Eric's promotion, he makes almost $200,000. The lovemaking with you is great, but you're not worth losing Eric's potential. Someday he'll be CEO, and I intend to be there. So, no divorce. Besides, you'd never leave your wife and kids," Megan said smugly. "You're right," Bennett replied sheepishly, "but we can still enjoy our time here, right?" "Right, stud," Megan smiled, taking his hand and walking out of sight. 6 months of cheating. I thought she was only staying with me for the money. I needed more evidence. Later, I saw Megan walking to the pool in a tangerine cover-up, with Bennett right behind her. I turned on my camera and mic. Megan took off her cover-up, revealing no top, and asked Bennett to help with suntan lotion. He eagerly complied, and I recorded everything. A hotel employee approached and asked Megan to cover up due to guest complaints. She sheepishly put on her cover-up, and they retreated to their room. I checked the camera and felt I almost had enough evidence. If I could catch them in action, I'd be done. I didn't call Megan that Sunday night, and she didn't call me. Monday morning, I woke at 9 a.m., ordered breakfast, and watched from my balcony. At 6 p.m., Bennett stepped onto their balcony in a hotel robe. I aimed my camera and started recording. Megan came out wearing a similar bathrobe and hugged Bennett from behind. "Think you can manage another round, stud?" "I may need another 30 minutes, she said. "You've worn me out," he laughed. They started making out right there. This was the proof of infidelity I needed. It might not matter in court, but it could influence Megan's parents and friends. The video was shot in public and would be admissible. After watching them on the balcony, I knew my marriage was over. The video was undeniable proof of her cheating, adding to her admission during our Sunday call. Seeing it was unbearable. I booked a flight home for the next day at 3 p.m. and confirmed my reservation. I decided to call Megan, hoping to catch them in the act. She answered on the 5th ring, sounding out of breath. "Hello," she mumbled. "Megan?" I asked with concern. "Are you okay? You seem out of breath." I was in the shower when I heard the phone. I grabbed a towel and ran to answer. "You should see me right now, you'd get some naughty ideas," she replied. "I'm sure I would, babe. How was your day? Was the seminar productive?" "Yes, Eric, we had a good day at the seminar," she said haltingly. Something in her voice surprised me. She seemed shocked and disappointed I didn't suggest phone lovemaking, as I usually would. "How was your day, honey?" she asked. "I feel down. I miss your voice and your presence. The bed feels big and lonely without you. But you know what that's like, right? You're spending your nights alone, aren't you?" I finally hinted at my suspicions. "Right, honey. That's right," she lied. Listen, Eric, I'm freezing and wet. I have to go now. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? I love you, she said. Right. Goodbye, Megan, I responded, hanging up. I packed my equipment and clothes. Feeling hungry, I went to the hotel restaurant with my camera to review the footage. As I walked in, I saw Megan and Bennett sitting in a booth. I sat 2 tables away, with my back to Megan and facing Bennett. I discreetly snapped a couple of photos without them noticing. Megan glanced my way once but didn't recognize me. I reviewed the day's footage while eating, sneaking peeks at the two of them. Megan looked my way once more but still didn't recognize me. I finished my meal and left before them. Sleep was difficult that night. I sat on the balcony at 7 o'clock the next morning, having moved the plants back inside. I no longer cared if they saw me, I had the evidence. At 7:15, a white van with blue FB lettering pulled up. Megan and Bennett got in, and it drove off. I'll be damned, I thought. They are actually doing some work this week. I had 2 things left to do this morning. First, I accessed one of the 2 computers the hotel provided for guests. I printed 2 pictures I had taken since arriving. Then, I went to the check-in desk and inquired who would be working the desk on Saturday morning. I found out it was a young man named Carlos. We had a chat, and I slipped him $200. If all went well, Megan and Bennett would have a little surprise when they checked out Saturday morning. I checked out and flew back to New York to take care of things back home. Tuesday morning, Megan and Bennett attended their seminars. By evening, they were both too tired for anything else. Bennett fell asleep early, while Megan waited up for my call. By 10 p.m., she was furious I hadn't called. By 11 o'clock, she started worrying. Did he know? Should I call him? But she convinced herself Eric knew nothing, even as she struggled to sleep. Wednesday was a repeat of Tuesday. Exhausted, they ordered dinner in. After a quick shower, Bennett wanted lovemaking, but Megan was too anxious waiting for my call. When the call didn't come, I panicked. Eric not calling 2 nights in a row was unusual. Even Bennett noticed and became concerned. By 9 a.m. Thursday, I called my mom to check on Eric, explaining I hadn't heard from him since Monday. She agreed to go over. 30 minutes later, my phone rang, it was from our home phone. I answered quickly. Eric, I'm so glad you called. Are you okay? It's me, Megan, Mom replied. Eric isn't here. I checked every room. His clothes are in the closets, and the computer is in the office. What's going on? Nothing, Mom, I lied. We had a little argument. I guess he's mad at me. I'm relieved he's not lying unconscious somewhere. If you hear from him, please ask him to call me. I will. This is so unlike him, Megan. You must have done something really bad. No, Mom, nothing like that. Just have him call me. Thanks. See you soon. Okay, honey. I miss you. See you Saturday. Good night, Megan. After the call, I was even more worried. Where could he be? I had to wait 2 more days to find out. I decided to call him myself. I got voicemail on both the home and cell lines. I left messages telling him how much I missed him and to call me if he was mad. I feared our marriage might be over. Friday dragged on. I wasn't surprised not to get a call. I tried calling Eric again but got no response. Bennett got no lovemaking that night either. Saturday morning, I was packed and ready early. By 11 o'clock, we checked out. At the lobby desk, the attendant, Carlos, picked up the phone when he saw us and spoke briefly. As we reached the desk, Bennett handed over our key cards and credit card. Carlos processed it and then said, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Weston, I hope you enjoyed your stay at the Victor and hope to see you back again soon. Hearing my real name, I was stunned. "What did you call me?" I asked. "You are Mrs. Weston, aren't you?" he asked with a sly smile. "Why do you think that?" I retorted. He placed 2 photos on the counter, one of Bennett and me at the restaurant and one of me sunbathing topless by the pool. Carlos explained. A man checking out asked if I knew the people in the photos. I told him you were the Bennetts. He corrected me, saying the man is Fred Bennett, but the woman is his wife, Megan Weston. He was here. Eric was here. When did he get here? I asked. Carlos gave me a look I couldn't read. Let me check. He typed into his computer and informed me, Mr. Eric Weston checked in last Friday at 4 o'clock and checked out Tuesday at noon. Oh my God. Fred, he was here all weekend, I exclaimed. Carlos turned to me. You are Mrs. Weston, aren't you? Yes, I am, I admitted, ashamed. Good. I have something for you. Carlos handed me an envelope. Inside was a note. Megan, goodbye. Doofus. I felt faint and leaned against Bennett for support. He took the note, read it, and whispered, let's get out of here. Before we could leave, Carlos called out, Mr. Bennett, I have an envelope for you too. Bennett reluctantly took it and read the note. Then he turned to look out the window, dropping the paper. I picked it up. Did you think you'd get off scot-free, a-hole? I spent 2 hours this morning with your wife. You won't get the homecoming you expected. I showed her all my evidence. This is just the beginning. I'll make your life a living hell. Bennett was still staring out the window. I picked up the photos and letters and put them in my purse. Carlos picked up the phone and said, did you hear it all? Was it what you expected? Thank you, sir. Goodbye. Was that my husband? I asked. Carlos smiled but said nothing. Let's go. We have a plane to catch, I told Bennett. On the way to the airport, I called my mom, asking her to meet us at JFK. She asked, isn't Eric picking you up? I don't know. We had an argument, and he's upset with me. Megan, what exactly was your argument about? She asked suspiciously. Nothing you need to worry about, I lied. That's nonsense. It must have been big for him not to call for 3 days. My God, Megan, what have you done? I started crying. I haven't done anything that can't be fixed. Please come to the airport in case Eric doesn't show up. If you've done what I think, he won't be there. I'll pick you up. She hung up. I don't remember much about the cab ride or boarding the plane. My mind shut down. It wasn't until we were in the air that I started thinking clearly again. I pulled out the photos of Bennett and me. Eric must have seen everything on Monday. A cold shiver went down my spine. The guy with the Mets cap, it must have been Eric. I knew a divorce might be in my future. Eric calling himself Doofus in his note meant he had us wired for sound. He must have heard our conversations. Bennett sat by the window, staring out blankly. I spent the flight looking at the letters and pictures, replaying Eric's phone calls in my mind. The not knowing terrified me. The last call felt especially wrong. I could only hope Eric would pick me up at JFK, but I doubted it. When the flight landed, I couldn't wait to leave the plane. I rushed through the terminal, hoping to see Eric. As I came off the ramp, I saw my mom waiting. Is Eric here? I asked. She shook her head. No. Bennett followed, looking for Jane. He called her name, his voice uncertain. She hung up. She's not coming, Bennett said as he sat on a bench, clearly crying. Mom pulled Bennett up and said, let's go. I'll drive you both home. On the drive, Mom gave me withering looks while Bennett stared out the window, tears streaming down his face. Arriving home, I asked Bennett to wait in the car and ran inside, yelling, I'm home. Eric? No response. I checked the bedroom. His closet and dresser were empty. Panicking, I ran to Eric's office. It was empty too. Realizing he was gone, I sat heavily in the living room. He had 4 days to plan, and removing his clothes and personal items was just the beginning. Mom handed me an envelope labeled divorce paperwork and a DVD with a note. If you want to know why, look at the DVD. She put the DVD in the player and sat down. Before she started it, Bennett asked, "Is everything all right?" "No. Eric is gone. His clothes are gone too," I replied. "I'm sorry it came to this. I'll call a cab and wait outside. I need to try to repair my marriage," Bennett said, walking out. After Bennett left, Mom started the DVD. The first scene showed me in a red bikini, with Bennett leering at my rear. I reached for the remote, but Mom wouldn't let go. "Don't," she said sternly. I watched myself kiss Bennett, feeling ashamed. The next scene had audio of us in Lummis Park when I called Eric doofus. I realized he had heard everything. When Bennett mentioned our 6-month affair, Mom stopped the DVD, crying. "Sorry, Mom. I don't know how I let this happen," I said. Mom gave me a disgusted look and pressed play again. I cringed as I heard myself say to Bennett, "Right, stud." The third scene showed me topless at the pool, letting Bennett rub lotion on me in public. I felt ashamed, imagining my mom's disgust. Next, it showed me pulling Bennett into the room for lovemaking. The worst part was the phone call Eric had recorded. "You are spending your nights alone, aren't you, Megan?" There was muffled talking. "Megan, are you there? You are sleeping alone, right?" His voice was filled with venom. I had responded, "Right, honey. That's right." If I had heard his tone, I would have known he knew. The next scene showed a hand covering the camera lens. The image moved wildly before settling on a view of the balcony. Eric appeared, dismantling the microphone and packing up the tripods. A scream pierced the night, my scream during a peak of pleasure. Eric's head turned toward the sound, agony on his face. He sobbed quietly for a few seconds, then pulled himself together and said, "That's the second time she has done this to you, Eric. It will never happen again." He turned off the camera, ending the show. Mom hung her head and cried. Seeing Eric's tears filled me with self-loathing. When he mentioned it the second time, I realized he had cried over me before. His determination that it would never happen again filled me with fear for my marriage. Mom asked, "What are you going to do now? Do you want to save your marriage or run off with that guy outside?" My God, Mom, I love Eric. Of course, I want to save my marriage. I'm not running off with Fred. He has a wife and 2 kids. He'll never leave them. Whether Fred saves his marriage isn't his choice, and saving yours isn't up to you either. That's Eric's decision. He's had days to decide. You already have divorce papers on the table. If you want to keep Eric, you'd better talk to him soon and give him a good reason to take you back. Don't wait too long, he has a head start. As soon as Mom left, I called Eric. He hadn't answered any of my calls, but I had to try. Surprisingly, he answered on the second ring. His voice was emotionless, not even angry. "Megan, what do you want?" Eric asked. "Eric, we need to talk. Will you?" I pleaded. "Sure. When?" "Tomorrow. Anytime you can," I replied. "Okay. Tomorrow at 2. Goodbye." His voice was cold and emotionless, as if he had already made up his mind. I knew this wouldn't be easy. The next afternoon, I saw his car pull into the driveway. Instead of coming to the front door, he walked around to the rear. I ran into the kitchen and sat at the table set for lunch. Eric walked in, surprised to see me. "Hi, Eric. Thanks for meeting me." He nodded and sat, pushing the plate away when I offered lunch. "I've already eaten," he said, his expression urging me to start talking. "Eric, I'm so sorry," I began, but he cut me off. "I know you're sorry, you got caught. Or sorry for cheating." "Yes, I'm sorry I got caught, but mostly I'm sorry I ever started cheating. The pain I've caused you is tearing me apart. Can you forgive me? Even if you do, I don't know if I can forgive myself." He stayed silent, emotions flickering across his face. Finally, he spoke, surprising me. "Do you know that in the mornings, I would lie in bed and watch you sleep? Or after my shower, I'd sit and watch you. Sometimes, I'd catch you open one eye and say, 'What?'" He smiled bitterly. "I'd laugh quietly and kiss your forehead. You looked so peaceful, so beautiful to me. I'd gaze at your face, your eyes, every curve. I thought how lucky I was to have you, my guardian angel. But now, the color and light you brought to my life are gone. Since Wednesday, every morning, I still smile, thinking how lucky I am to have you, until I remember. Then the pain returns. Every morning, I love you a little less, and the pain is not as bad. I realized my mom was right. I waited too long. If I had come home Wednesday night, maybe I could have made a difference," I said. "Now it's too late. Eric has decided on divorce, the last thing I want. Please, Eric, don't make a hasty decision. I know I've been terrible and don't deserve any consideration, but I beg you, give me a chance to make it up to you. Let me show you I can be the wife you deserve. Please, give me a second chance." I waited for his response, seeing tears in his eyes. A tear ran down his cheek, and I wiped it away with my thumb. "I swore you wouldn't make me cry again. Now look at me," he said sadly. "Eric, on the DVD, you mentioned this was the second time you cried over me. When was the first time?" "Megan, I fell in love with you the first time I saw you get out of your dad's car. My best memories are of that summer we spent together. My worst memory is when you ditched me at the harvest dance for another guy. You left me to be ridiculed by Ryan Parker and the football team. I cried many nights alone in my bed. So Monday night was the second time I cried over you. The tear you just wiped away is the third. I'm sorry, Eric. I know I keep saying it, but it was just foolish lovemaking. He's gone, and I don't care. I will never see him again. All I need is you. I don't know, Megan. I saw you do things in public, you went braless, topless, and let him touch you at the pool. What he said next sent shivers through my body. He shook his head and said, I heard the scream. I know I can't compete with that. I won't compete with another man. I won't compete with the memory of that other man for my wife. If we stay together, I will always be competing with his ghost. You won't have to compete with anybody. You will never understand unless it happens to you. Eric sadly shook his head and began to rise from his seat. I thought he was about to leave, and I saw my marriage falling apart. Desperation took over, and I leapt from my chair, knocking it over. I ran to Eric, hugging him tightly and babbling, Don't go, Eric. Please don't leave me. When I saw your letter at the hotel, I realized how much you and our marriage mean to me. Please forgive me and take me back. He loosely put his arms around me, gently stroking my hair. After a while, he placed his hands on my shoulders and gently moved me back to look into my eyes. Whenever I thought of our future, I saw us together, a house with a white picket fence, 2 sons and a daughter like you for me to spoil. I imagined us planning weddings, celebrating anniversaries, and growing old together, our love supporting us through hard times. Now I see nothing but a big black hole where there used to be love. I see the numbing darkness of a life without you. He backed away, saying, I have to go. I have something to do. Don't go. We have so much to discuss. No. I have to write a thank you letter. What letter could be more important than trying to repair our marriage? And who do you need to write to? Ronnie Millsap. Why? What does he have to do with this? He helped me to dump a cheating wife. Eric turned and walked out the door, whistling a tune I later learned was a stranger in my house. 5 years later. Eric, can you bring the car around to the front of the house? My wife called. We were headed to my parents' house for a Memorial Day cookout. I exited through the back door, passing the newly built tin garage to the cliff overlooking the beach below. Across the Long Island Sound, I could see the Connecticut shore. I no longer lived in the rented house in Harborview but in the old town of Muttontown. Turning back to the garage, I had to choose which car to take to my parents' home. My eyes settled on garage number 5. I clicked the remote and watched as the door lifted to reveal my newest acquisition. I closed the door and started the engine, loving the sound of the powerful rebuilt 390 V8 Ford engine. As the car cleared the garage, I lowered the convertible top and drove around to the circular drive in front of the house. I got out and admired my latest pride and joy, a 1961 Ford Thunderbird convertible with gleaming chrome, black paint, and matching interior. God, she's beautiful, I murmured. My wife opened the door and frowned. The baby and I can't ride with the top down. You have to put it up. I sighed and told her, okay, I'll put it up, but it looks so much cooler with the top down. If you ever want me to be in it with my top down again, you'd better put it up now, she said, smirking. My mind flashed back to the day I first got the car and we went driving with the top down. Na had pulled her top down, and I'd quickly hit the button to put the convertible top up. Na smiled smugly, knowing how to wield her considerable lovemaking power. I met Na 2 months before my divorce from Megan was finalized. The one thing Mr. Diamond, the bank president, and his ex-wife agreed on was their adopted child from Romania. While they hated each other, they both loved that little girl. The Diamonds ran a charity to help Romanian orphans. I knew I was expected to attend the $1,000 per plate fundraiser, as I had become a favorite of Mr. Diamond. I was seated at his table, next to his wife. There was an empty seat beside me. Before sitting down, I noticed the card on the table reserved for Ciranova. As I sat, I nodded hello to Mr. Diamond and kissed the cheek of his ex-wife. I took a second glance at my boss because of his mischievous smile. Moments later, a stunning woman in black sat next to me. Mr. Diamond beamed and introduced me to Nina, pronounced Nina Ciranova, a Victoria's Secret lingerie model. I later learned that Nina was a Romanian orphan herself and on the charity board. Nina and I hit it off that night. She told me about her horrific life in Romanian orphanages, nearly bringing me to tears. I wanted to protect her. She said she felt my empathy and wanted to know more about me. Many men asked her to dance, but she turned them all down. I didn't ask, thinking she didn't want to. Nina took matters into her own hands and asked me to dance. I said yes. We dated for 2 years before marrying at Mr. Diamond's estate in Southampton, New York. I thought his wife was a bit young for him at 35 to his 61, but he always smiled, so what did I know? Our first year was great. When Nina told me she wanted a baby, I asked if she realized having a baby would put her modeling career on hold. She looked into my eyes and said, "The one thing I want most in this world is to have your baby." A big smile crossed her face as she added, "Maybe more than one." I'm sure I smiled back and suggested, "Let's start trying right away." We both laughed and ran to the bedroom. A year and a half later, our son, Eric Jr., was born. After settling Eric Jr. in the car seat, we got in the car. The only non-stock part of the T-Bird was the air conditioner I had installed. From experience, I knew Nina didn't want to spoil her hair after getting dressed up. She'd rather ride in 100 degrees heat than have one hair out of place. The AC made it more pleasant for both of us. As we walked into my dad's backyard, where he was barbecuing, I was shocked to see Megan and her mom, Cheryl, talking to my mom. Nina, carrying Eric Jr., walked to the table and sat down. Mom quickly took her favorite, and only, grandson from Nina. I went to Dad and asked, "What are they doing here?" Dad said, "Keep your voice down. Your mom invited them. She and Cheryl have become close since Frank died. Megan was all alone, so your mother invited her too. You know she had a hard time getting rid of that a-hole Ryan Parker after you two divorced. I knew she married Ryan after I met Nina. I didn't think she was that stupid. Well, she did cheat on you with that idiot Bennett. I thought for sure they'd divorce, but his wife took him back. She did have 2 kids to worry about, which must make a difference. For a long time, I had hired a PI to keep tabs on him. Whenever Bennett was close to getting a good job, I made sure word got out that he was a bad employee, and he lost out. This went on until he, or his wife, figured out I was behind his bad luck. Jane Bennett called and directly asked if Bennett's job troubles were my doing. Before I could answer, she told me it hurt not just Bennett but also her and their 2 kids. She said it was horrible what he did to me but pleaded not to take it out on her children. I didn't directly admit involvement but assured her he'd have an easier time getting a job from then on. She thanked me profusely and apologized for Bennett ruining my marriage. I have no idea what he's doing now since I let the PI go, along with all the remaining hate I had for him. Letting go of that baggage was a big relief. I took my son from Nina and greeted Megan and Cheryl. Then I walked over to a bench near the kitchen door. Moments later, Cheryl sat next to me and reached out to hold Eric Jr. We sat quietly as she played with my 8-month-old son. Finally, with tears in her eyes, she lamented, "He should have been my grandson. I would have made the best grandma, you know that, don't you, Eric?" I looked closely at Cheryl. She had aged over the last 5 years. I knew our divorce had been hard on her. She always liked me and was thrilled when Megan and I got married. "I know you would have, Mom. You were a great mom to Megan, and I know you would have been the best grandma too. Thank you, Eric. I've missed you these last 5 years. Oh, and congratulations on your promotion at the bank. Your dad tells me you're now in the number 2 position." "Yes." Mr. Diamond finally retired, with some pressure from the board. They moved Howard Goldman to the top spot, and he made me the executive vice president in charge of operations. Basically, if I keep my nose clean, when Howard leaves, I should move up to president. "Eric, Megan wanted to talk to you but was afraid to come over. Can I tell her it's okay?" "Sure, Mom. It's been 5 years. I'm sure we can talk civilly." Cheryl went back to the table and spoke to Megan. Before she could get up, Nina came to me and said, "Be gentle with her, Eric. She's very fragile. Don't upset her." I nodded. Nina walked away as Megan approached. "Hi, Eric. You look good." "Hi, Megan. So do you. Nina is beautiful, Eric. Inside and out. And a good person, I can tell." "Thank you. I've been lucky to have 2 beautiful wives." "That's not true. I may have been attractive outside, but inside? Not so much." "That's not true, you're beautiful inside and out. You just got blinded by Fred Bennett. I'm sure it was something I did to push you away." "That's really not true, Eric. Do you remember what I did at the dance with Ryan Parker?" "What did you do there?" "No, it was me. There's something inside me that screws up all the good things. Something that's not so pretty. Let's change the subject. Mom tells me you got another promotion at work. I always knew you'd rise to the top." "Well, good things have happened to me in the last 5 years, I said, looking at Nina and smiling. When I turned back to Megan, I saw she looked at Nina too. She turned to me and smiled. "Eric, there's one thing I need to clear up from that time 5 years ago." I hadn't wanted to go there, but she brought it up. It was the phone call where I called you doofus. I want you to know that was the first time I ever called you that. To this day, I don't know why I did it. That's not why I brought that day up, I said. It's about what you said to Fred about me. You told him I'd be president of the bank and how much money I made. I realized it sounded like you only wanted to be with me for the money. That's not what I meant at all, Megan said earnestly. I knew you'd be a success. I was always so proud of you. I just wanted to share in your accomplishments. It was never about the money. Please believe that. When I first heard it, I was sure it was about the money. It wasn't until I let Nina hear what you said that she suggested I misunderstood. She thought that from the look on your face, you were bragging about me to Fred. It made me feel better about you. I think that's when I started to forgive. Then there's one more thing I need to thank you for, Megan said. What's that? What you did for Jane Bennett. She called me crying about what you'd been doing to Fred. She asked me to call you, but I told her it would be better coming from her. I gave her your number at the bank. She called to tell me that Fred finally got a job that could support them. She wanted me to thank you for her. I'm glad it turned out well. I never thought about her or the children. I'm glad it's over. I stood up and hugged Megan. As we walked to the table, Megan was crying happy tears, and Nina was smiling happily at me. We sat at the table and enjoyed the day. On the ride home that night, the convertible top was up, but Nina had her top down. It turned out to be another wonderful day.